This episode's gonna go off the rails.
Holy shit, man.
Literally no one wants to see that.
It's fucking garbage.
If you don't solve the fucking puzzle box, then they don't come. So put the box down.
Again, you could not be more wrong.
I agree to disagree.
God, you need to, be better.
Any of these 4 movies, I am automatically out.
You're overrated as shit.
Welcome to the Scare Bears podcast, where we only deal in the hottest of takes. I am one half of your host, Ken, and as with me as always is my amazing, wonderful, hottest of takes co-host, Rev Horror. Rev, how are you tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Ken. How are you?
I am doing well. How was your weekend? What'd you watch?
Good. You know, I've been kind of all over the place.
This episode, we are excited for. We have been talking about this episode. This one is going to be the hottest of takes. We are first going to do our movie prompt, where you and I come up with a brand new movie based off the writing prompts of Reddit. So our writing prompts, if anybody's ever interested in checking that out, it is an amazing subreddit with some really talented people on there to come up and read some short stories and things like that people really do have a fun time doing. Today's writing prompt was: you have always had the ability to steal the body of anyone you wish. You've had many bodies and indulged in equal luxuries for a long time using it, at least until you found yourself trapped within one made just for you. Rev, what movie are you what's the elevator pitch? Where are you going with this one?
Okay, so I'm going to pitch the whole trailer. The trailer shows a man, he's jet-setting in Paris, he's living the life of the rich and famous, and it shows him as he's walking off this huge stage at this grand party. It shows him touching someone, shaking their hand and transferring into their body, and now he's the head of a major boardroom running a huge Fortune 500 company. He shakes hands with an athlete and he's dominating the NBA finals, and then as that athlete, he sees a man at a party, this British guy with a smoking hot girlfriend, enjoying life and talking about his yacht that he's going to plan on going to a huge party on the weekend. He shakes hand to transfer his consciousness, and all seeming to go well, he heads onto the yacht with his girlfriend and the screen goes black. Wakes up in a large room chained to a wall with both of his hands and locking gloves locked to the wall. He can't shake hands anymore, and standing in front of him is the woman he believes to be his girlfriend. She says, "It's been centuries, but we found you now, and from now on your power will only be used to get close to the people we want dead, starting with the President of the United States." This summer, join Scarlett Johansson and Jason Statham in a new kind of spy thriller, Hands of Fate, coming July 4th weekend. Shake hands with destiny.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that is amazing. I got goosebumps at the end there. Shake hands with destiny.
Ship it, as you say.
In a world where Jason Statham can be anybody he wants.
I dig it, man. I'd watch it.
For sure. Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Actually, what's really interesting is that I had a couple of the same elements in mind that you're going to be like, wait, I came up with the same elements. So, for centuries, Connor has been living his best life. Cursed by Morgana as one of Arthur's most trusted knights, Connor has survived centuries, watching empires rise and fall. He has the ability to jump into anyone's body within seeing distance and take over their life, until one day, while enjoying a coffee at a cafe in France, his world begins spinning. And as he tries to jump, he can't. He wakes up in a cell where a coven of witches forces Connor to relive the painful memories of those he has possessed over the years and the fallout from his actions. They do this because he has possessed one of the coven's members' great-great-grandfather during the Civil War. Connor, chained to the wall, struggles through the psychic pain to escape. Who is the villain? Connor with all of his deeds, or the coven keeping him captive in his body? Find out this fall when you see Body Double.
Nice. I like it. Great title. Although, I gotta say, I can't imagine anybody really that I'd want to possess during the Civil War, That seemed like kind of a shitty time.
Well, I mean, that's the point. I was thinking, one of the scenes could be he only possesses somebody new when he's dying.
Interesting.
Right? So then he's forced to relive the death after he jumps of the people waking back up into consciousness, and then all they do is die.
That's interesting.
Because that's how he keeps surviving for centuries.
Idea.
Is that he can jump bodies, but he literally he jumps when he dies, so he's able to live and then build up the ability to that. So
that's brilliant, man. I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where we're going with that. That is our writing prompt, our elevator pitches, if you will. I think we should just call the segment elevator pitch.
That's exactly what it should be.
Elevator pitch. My people will call your people. We'll do lunch, ship it, make the screenplay, get the rights, and most importantly, points off the back end.
That's right. I prefer points off the front end, but whatever.
This episode's going to go off the rails. I could just already tell. This one is going to be one where I think you and I'm going to call it the fisticuffs episode. The fisticuffs of the hottest takes. This is the episode because we did underrated horror movies, right? This is the one we said, all right, what are horror movies that we do not like that the majority of people do like overwhelming popularity. People, whenever people ask like, what are horror movies that you should see, blah, blah, blah. And then they always recommend these movies. Or you look online for like the top 10 horror movies released recently. Or you search like, Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb for the top 250 horror movies. These are horror movies that are on there that I and Rev just absolutely do not like. So this one we might go back and forth. This one's gonna produce some interesting arguments. However, I am ready to defend all of my choices. Now, Rev, when you were coming up with your list for this one, what were you thinking about? What was your thought process on it?
I think the overrated, that's a big piece of it. The way that I kind of viewed it is movies that most everyone loves, or at least the majority loves, and I either think are overrated or I just fucking hate, as you'll see with a couple of them. So that's really kind of where I went. It's a nice mix of new and old and classic, and they all suck. That's the unifying factor here.
I started off with like when you first proposed a list, I was just like, oh, that's a really cool idea, because like I said, we had just done underrated horror movies, and I can assure you right now that none of these movies on my list have Joe Anderson in them.
Oh, well, of course they don't. If they had Joe Anderson in them, they wouldn't be on this fucking list.
That's very true. That is very true, at least for me.
I think 7 of mine have Joe Anderson in them.
Joe Anderson could save anything, sir. It doesn't matter, all right? So yeah, I think that when I started, I was just like, okay, here are the four. The four where whenever I read a list, like, is, fall victim to clickbait, as does everybody, where, you're on your phone and then an article pops up from someplace that's just like, the 10 best horror movies, so you're just like, all right, let's see what they got on there. And if it starts with any of these 4 movies, I am automatically out. And then after that, I was thinking like, okay, because it was a little harder to come up from there. It's like, because I am somebody who, and I'm sure you would agree with me because you work in the, as a reviewer, you work as a writer, that if you take an attempt and you try, you should respect that process. Like, regardless of whether or not you hate a movie, we still have to throw credit to respect somebody who actually went out and did it, for those of us and for others who might not have the ability to do that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. But again, I think there's also, it doesn't make your movie good. There is a difference between I respect that you made a movie and I respect the movie that you made. Because a lot of times, I mean, especially with the website, I review a ton of indie horror, and indie movies generally, just if you look, as a general rule, indie movies are often not as good as their Hollywood counterparts, or at least not as well made. But if you have a good idea and you put that good idea out there, especially if you're a talented script writer, or you've got a couple of talented indie actors around you, you can make something great as long as the idea and the thesis is good. But as a general rule, just because you made a movie doesn't mean it's a movie I want to watch. So for me, I respect the process. I don't always respect the product.
Absolutely. I completely agree 100%. I think that that's the best way to put it, is that you respect the process, but not always a product. Or there is a difference between, appreciating a filmmaker for actually making a film, but also making sure that that film is somewhat watchable.
Absolutely. And a lot of times it's not.
So then I was thinking, I was just like, all right, well, from there, what are some of the most overrated ones in terms of what is really, I went to Rotten Tomatoes and I went on the critic score, and I just looked for the top, 250 horror movies based off critic score. And I was just like, I cannot believe some of these movies are on here based off that critic score. And I'll mention those when I go through mine, because they are just ones that did not resonate with me for a myriad of different reasons, as we will all find out soon. The one thing that I think that we've touched on in the past in other episodes, and that I wanted to ask you, when you're watching a movie, what, just to kind of revisit this, and I think I remember your answer, but just wanted to make sure that we got it again. What elements do you think are the most important that you look for, that if that falls apart, that elements of the movie, whether it be cinematography, whether it be acting, whether it be music, whether it be writing, whether it be direction, or even special effects, what element do you think when that falls apart, that's where the movie goes?
God, it's so tough, because it really is. I think if you were to pick one, I would have to say the writing. I think the writing is the most important thing. But I think you can have a decent everything and make a decent movie. You don't have to have just a world-class writer. You don't have to have the best Oscar-winning actors. I think as long as you've got a good idea, which I do think comes down to the script and how you put it together, I think that almost anything can be good. Because, there's tons of movies that are a hell of a lot of fun that have awful acting, and the cinematography is just film school at best. But it's a good idea, and it's entertaining, and it's well written, so it's still a lot of fun. But if you have, the best actors in the world and beautiful cinematography, but the story sucks, it's not gonna be a good movie, no matter how good all of the rest of the pieces are. So if I had to pick one, that's what I would say. But I really do think you don't have to have amazing anything as long as everything is tolerable.
I would have to say that the writing for me as well is like the number one thing that I look for in a movie. Like, I mean, I could watch a movie that has, stilted acting or maybe doesn't have the best musical cues, or as we talked about in the best sound drops episode.
Needle drops.
I would have to say that as long as a movie's well written, some really memorable lines, or at least make coherent sense, I'm kind of in. So I think that's kind of the measure and the metric that I will go for
sure.
when I talk about this. Just wanted to say, disclaimer before both of us start, I love feedback, so come for me in the comments. If you completely disagree with any of the ones that I have on my list, if you think that I'm crazy, let's talk about it. Let's have it out. You can message me on Instagram, and we'll get into those ashes, whether it's on Instagram or Slasher, or just get in the comments, people. I really want to go for it. So yes, I think we're gonna have some fun.
100% agree. I will fight you in an alley, and this is gonna be super fun because it's gonna piss so many people off.
It's gonna go for fun. It's gonna be great. All right. Rev, my boy. Please hit me with your number 10.
Number 10, man, I got to start off controversial, I guess. We're going Friday the 13th. The original Friday the 13th is just not a good movie. It's got some okay kills, and I appreciate it for starting the series off on a good foot, but the twist at the end makes zero sense. Betsy Palmer's performance is silly and ridiculous, and it is a simple cash grab film that just caught on. The series is great, and I'm a fan, but the first film kind of sucks.
That is a hot take, sir. That is the hottest.
I'll tell you what really bothered me is at the very end of the movie, right? So like the whole movie, and I talked about this, I reviewed the whole series in October of last year. The whole movie, Jason is, stabbing, well, not Jason, obviously, it's Jason's mother, but the killer anyway is like stabbing two people on a bed with a spear, and is like chopping people's heads off with a machete. And then at the very end of the movie, it's revealed to be Betsy Palmer, and she goes to fight this main girl, and the main girl just fucking kicks her ass, because she's an old woman. Because when you actually see that it's an old woman, she just can't stand up to it because she's like 80 years old. It just makes zero sense. And I get, they even designed the poster before they even wrote the movie. I understand they were trying to make a bunch of money, and they certainly did. Good for them. It just it's not that great.
Yeah, you know what? I completely agree, and I think that I'm going to hold my comments until a little later on down the list.
Ooh.
My only criticism of that, sir, is that you have it too low.
Ooh, I'm interested. Well, okay, what's your number 10 then, Ken?
My number 10 is The Shining. No.
I knew it was going to make the list. It had to after all the
The reason I put it is that there's so many things that I got to justify about this choice. The first thing that I have to justify is that the reason that I put it at number 10 is because I understand that it's a controversial pick. Now, the movie itself isn't terrible, okay? The movie is not terrible. I have to put it on there because every single time that somebody talks about this movie, I am that asshole. I am that asshole. Instead of am I the asshole, I am recognizing that I am the asshole because I'm the one guy at the party that will turn around with a drink in his hand and be like, that movie sucks because the book is 10 times better, 100 times better. And we will just get into a conversation about that. The Shining as a movie in itself can be fine, but the other thing that you could take out of that movie entirely is the haunted hotel. You ruined Danny, right? Because Danny is no longer becoming this character that's in it. It's just some ridiculous kid with goofy ass expressions on his face, waving his fingers, talking into a different voice. So you ruined Danny and you ruined Tony. Then you took Jack and you dialed him up to 10 automatically right at the beginning, right? So Jack's just automatically crazy. There's nowhere else for him to go. Then you took Wendy, which is not a weak-willed woman in the novel, and you made her into this ridiculous, nonsense, stereotypical, like just housewife of nobody that has no power whatsoever and doesn't do anything, right? And then you put it in a haunted hotel. But honestly, did you need the hotel? Because the movie itself is just about Jack going crazy from a cabin fever being trapped in this place. It has nothing to do with the whole haunted thing. In fact, if you watch the movie, I think that there's only a certain time, like just say the movie's an hour and a half. I'm going to go on a bold contention with this. I'm going to go bold. The movie's an hour and a half. We can say that there's maybe about 15 cumulative minutes in this movie where there's a haunted thing going on. That's all I'm going to say.
Honestly, if you got that mad at your number 10, I can't wait to see what happens higher up.
I went a little rant there.
You
just wait till my rant. Just wait till my number one rant. Oh my God.
Oh my Lord.
I've been geared up for a week now.
Well, All right then. Hey, you know what? I know you hate The Shining, and I get it. It wasn't going to go on this list. I'm not as big of a fan as most people are either. So I agree with a lot of your points as we've talked about before on the show. But yeah, I mean, holy shit, man! There you go. I guess you killed it.
Yeah, that's and 83%. It's got an 83% critic score. 83%, right? So it's like okay. All right. All right, cool. That's just mine. And you know what? People, like I said, come for me. I'm fine with it. I understand that The Shining is a beloved movie. Hey, I even love the scene where Jack has the axe and he's antagonizing his wife on the stairs. I love that scene. I don't mind the scene with the two twin girls and then showing their bodies in the hallway. I just feel like it's unnecessary for the story in which Kubrick was trying to tell. Because then it's not, is it a haunted hotel? Or are people just going crazy because they're stuck in a hotel and they imagine that it's haunted? The whole thing is ridiculous. I don't like it. Yeah, that's, yep.
Wait. So hold on. You like The Shining or you don't like The Shining? It's hard to tell. Anyway,
all I'm saying is read the book. Read the book. It is better. And I'm not going to be accused. I'm not going to be accused of being one of those hoity-toity fucks that's just like, oh, the book is always better, because the book is not always better. I'm the first one to say that. For instance, I know this is another hot take. People are going to come for me on this one, but I never read any Harry Potter book, but the films are fantastic. I don't see the need to. That's right. I said it. I don't need the ancillary shit that happens in the background because I've already read articles and I've already seen videos on YouTube that explain it. I don't need to read it. I'm good with the way that the films are. They do everything perfect for me. I'll take my 9 movies. I'm good. So I'm not going to say the book is always better, but I'm going to say that in this case, the book is better.
Okay, I agree. Take a breath, kid. Take a breath. We're supposed to be arguing with each other, man, not arguing with Stanley Kubrick. He's been dead for 20 years.
In the editing software, there's the ability for me to slow it down, and I have a feeling that I'm going to have to be using that effect for a lot of my
You know what? Honestly, I'm just glad to see you passionate about something, even if it is hatred.
It's like I'm such an easygoing, nice guy that it's like when I have the ability to be cantankerous, I'm taking my cantankerous up to a level. I'm taking it to the next level.
Fair enough. Understandable. You're like a ticking time bomb.
All right, give me your number 9.
All right, so number 9, and I think honestly, this is what this list is going to be, man. We're going to be shitting on people's all-time favorite movies here. My number 9 is Dawn of the Dead. The original Dawn of the Dead is an incredibly important movie, but it's also kind of a bad one. It's cartoony, which was an intentional choice by Romero, but it doesn't work. The effects don't stand up at all. It's dreadfully boring for most of the film, and it's a horrible film when compared to Night of the Living Dead. I get the messaging, and again, it's important and needed to be made. It's just not great. And here's the hot take: Zack Snyder's was 1,000 times better and way more entertaining.
Oh my god! Now that, okay, so I was kind of with you. I was with you up until that point, because I don't think that anything that Zack Snyder makes is anything 1,000 more entertaining than anything.
Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead is the shit.
That one I'm gonna have to take exception with, sir. That is bold.
It's not bold. It's a fucking great movie.
Oh my god! I don't think it's as good as you think it make it out to be.
I mean, it may have its issues, but it's super entertaining. That beginning scene of Zack's Dawn of the Dead is outstanding. The whole scene in the mall, the fucking just the characters that are in the mall, the way that they handle all that, the escape. Oh, it's great. Great movie.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Okay.
That one is, you know what? But that's the whole point. That's
right.
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to disagree with you because I'm sure that I'm going to have some problems with the next one on my list. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it, man. I agree to disagree.
All right. Well, okay. Let's hear your next rant. What's your number 9?
Number 9 for me is Hereditary.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Hereditary is not as good as a movie as everybody makes it out to be. And we all need to come together as a collective society and understand that, because the first 3/4 of that movie, in fact, the first 7/8 of that movie is nothing but a family drama where horrific thing happens at the last 15 minutes of them. I am sorry. Hereditary is overhyped and overplayed for a horror movie, and sitting at a 90% critic score, way unjustified for what that movie actually is.
Oh my God. You could not be more wrong. You could try, but you would not be successful.
Please tell. You know what? Justify Hereditary.
Okay, first off, as far as family drama, I'll give you that. It's also a fucking good one, man. Toni Collette should have won an Oscar in Hereditary. That's number 1. Number 2, the first 7/8 of the movie, nothing happens. Did you forget the bitch that has her head cut off? Did you forget that part?
So one scene makes an entire
It's a
movie.
pretty damn good scene, in
Is that the
fairness.
philosophy for it?
No, but it's excellent performances from the very beginning. The horror is sprinkled throughout. The scenes in particular, A, at the dinner table, B, when Toni Collette finds her daughter outside, those two scenes were master classes in acting. And if you don't think so, you're just wrong. I can understand saying it's overrated because a lot of people talked about it as being the best and scariest horror movie ever made. I wouldn't go that far, but calling it not one of the best movies of the last 10 years is insanity.
That movie is overrated as shit.
You're overrated as shit.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I totally am, right? But again, Hereditary is it's time that we collectively look at that movie again and say, listen, is it a fine movie? Sure, it's a fine movie. Were there great performances? I agree with you. Toni Collette is amazing in that movie, and pretty much only Toni Collette. Because you take Gabriel Bryan, who I mean, he's not the best actor in the world. That's my other hot take on this movie. But you know what?
But he also isn't in much of the movie either, in fairness.
That's what I'm saying. He's not. And I just agreed. I'm not going to disagree about Toni Collette's performance in that movie. I think that if that's the thing that you want to take, that's fine. But I don't think that one amazing actor's performance in a movie makes the movie completely deserving
The writing
of a 90%
was
grade
great.
score or deserving to be on the top 10 list of everybody's thing. And I disagree with you on the writing thing because there's nothing like literally that movie is like it is. You know what it is? It's the Game of Thrones. It's like, oh, here's the opening, and then nothing happens, and then boom, something amazing happens to keep your interest. Then nothing happens, and then boom, something amazing.
You mean like a movie?
That's bullshit. There are so many movies where you can actually hold your interest and not have to look at. This is what I call a watch-looking movie, which is where you judge a movie by the number of times that you looked at your watch.
God, you need to be better. I don't know what to tell you, man. That's great.
That's the argument of the century. Be better.
All right. Look, it's your take. It's your list. That's fine. You're wrong, but that's fine. I get it.
I think you're wrong about being wrong. But anyway, all right.
That's all right.
If I'm wrong, if I'm wrong in Hereditary, then shoot me up with your number 7.
Number 8. My number 8 is The Omen. The Omen's boring as fuck. It just is. It's another movie that I appreciate for what it means, and I appreciate the cult classic status of it. It's just not even a slightly fun watch. The only reason it's not higher on the list is because of the nanny scene, which, to be fair, is one of my favorite of all time. The rest of the film, it sucks. Especially for a movie that spawned so many sequels and is seen as such like a legendary film. The Omen kind of sucks.
You know what? This one, you're right. It's actually in my honorable mention.
Hey!
I have to completely agree. There's like for that movie to spawn as many, like you hit the nail on the head, which is for that movie that spawned that many sequels, it wasn't that good of a movie to begin with. Like I don't understand how it spawned that many sequels.
I mean, it's a good idea, you know? It's a good idea.
Yeah, but there's nothing. It's a boring movie, and at a certain point, you just kind of want to just kill the kid.
Well, yeah, obviously he's the Antichrist.
But like before you learn that he's the Antichrist,
Fair enough.
I was willing to off that fucker before that.
I think that's totally fair.
See, it's like, but I mean, and we'll discuss it a little bit more when it comes onto my list. But at least the sequels of Friday the 13th make sense, right? It's like they took that movie, which I think was just a. Well, never mind. We'll come
Get to that later.
We'll come to that in about 2 spots. Hashtag spoilers. Hashtag episode spoilers.
Well, okay, then what's your number 8 then?
My number 8 is Bodies, 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 which received an 86% critic score, which I don't understand that either, because this was supposed to be, people tout this as like the new millennial horror movie, right? This is like, oh, this is what horror movies are going to kind of move into. It's like, it was supposed to be, it's presented as this like, horror comedy, which it's not, right? There's nothing comedic that happens in that movie. And then even though the horror movie, the horror aspect of that movie, to me, a horror movie needs to have the element that you want to care about the characters that are trying to survive. Because if you don't care about the characters that are trying to survive, there's nothing to root for. At that point, you're just rooting for the killer. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. There are several movies where I definitely root for the killer, right?
Sure.
But
you're a horror movie fan. That's part of the gig.
But this movie, there's nothing redeeming about this movie. It doesn't, it's just angsty for no reason whatsoever. They tried so many different things and like with plot twists and trying to introduce elements that didn't have any payoff whatsoever. The characters in the movie were just written kind of just jaded and stilted, and you really just don't end up caring about anything. And then they tried to include this twist at the end, but you called that twist the minute that you started trying to crack the movie. Like there was nothing amazing about it. It wasn't inventive. It wasn't fun. And honestly, you're just kind of watching the movie like, why are these kids just yelling at each other about nonsense?
So I'll take a little bit of a different tack with that one because I actually don't think it's particularly overrated because I think most people hated it. I also think there is a little bit of a old man yells at cloud about this movie because it is really more of a millennial or whatever the hell the next generation is kind of movie.
That's Rev calling me Grandpa Simpson. Thank you so
That's
much.
exactly right.
I'm only in my 40s, man. I'm not pushing boomer status.
That's all right. Just pull up your diapers and we'll finish
Yes.
the list. But no, like I said, I didn't think it was a great movie. Don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing that it's a good movie per se. I'm more
So you don't think it's
saying-
overrated? You think that it's rated, and you think that the way that people rated it was fairly because people don't like it.
I do. I think the most horror movie fans hated it, like hated it. But I do again. I think there's some of that like this new generation sucks kind of feeling behind why a lot of people think they hated it. Kind of like the new Ghostbusters movie, like not the new one and not the new one before that, but the new one that had what's her name, Melissa McCarthy in it. People wanted to say they didn't like that movie because there were women stars, but it was a decent movie and it was pretty funny. The only reason they didn't fucking like it is because it had women. This movie here, Bodies, I felt was largely the same thing, but it was because it was young people. Again, that's not arguing for it being an amazing movie. I just think that's why a lot of people hated it. I'm not even saying that's why you hated it. I just think that's why a lot of people hated it. I thought it was okay,
I mean, that's an interesting take. I don't know. I watched the movie and I was kind of hoping for the nuclear bomb to come to just kind of wipe off the entire thing so we didn't have to deal with it anymore.
I really hate Pete Davidson. I don't know why people think he's funny.
I'm sure Pete Davidson's broken up.
You know what? If he's listening to this, fuck you, Pete Davidson.
There you go. Pete Davidson's going to come knocking on Rev's door.
And actually, that's what was funny. I don't like him at all. He's never once made me laugh. I actually thought he was decent in this movie. I didn't think he was that bad.
I didn't I guess maybe you're right. Maybe I aged out of it because I didn't understand it. I guess I didn't understand why it was made. And there's a couple of movies on here that I have that where I'm just like, why was this movie ever made to begin with? Or who greenlit the movie? And the only theory that I have with some of these movies that were greenlit was that there was a studio executive meeting where studio executives sat down and, a big office thing. They went around the room and they're like, hey, pitch me a movie. And right before the person started speaking, somebody stood behind him and then cracked him as hard as they could with a 2x4, like Al Capone style from The Untouchables. And then whatever came out was what the movie was that they were to make. And that's how I feel like this pitch meeting went.
It's fair. It is a movie with really shitty, unlikable people, but I also think that's kind of the point too. I think it was kind of poking fun.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with like having a young driven horror movie. Like, okay,
sure.
For Freaky, I love Freaky. Like, I thought Freaky was amazing.
Sure.
And if I Babysitter is another example of that too. I love Babysitter 1 and 2. We talk about that all the time, or I talk about those movies all the time. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a younger generation speak to horror movies. I just think that those movies have to be, good.
I think I get it. I think that's fair. And like I said, I'm not arguing for that the movie's great. I do think it is rated. I think that's a good way to put it. I think it's rated.
You could be overwhelmed and you could be underwhelmed, but can you ever just be whelmed?
I am whelmed by that movie. That's what I would say.
All right. What is your number 7?
Number 7 is The Black Coat's Daughter. I hated this movie so goddamn much. I'm not a big fan of Shipka anyway, but I've enjoyed a couple things that she's been in, but this was a bad movie. It's ridiculously slow. It fails in pretty much every attempt where it tries to be scary, and it bored me so much that I didn't even understand the ending on the first watch. Like, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because I just didn't give a shit. It was seen as like the height of art house and elevated horror for a period, and I went into it expecting it to be good. It most certainly is not.
Yeah, unfortunately, I really can't. This is like the first time, or one of the first times that you've caught me. Well, not the first time, but there's a few times, but this is like one of the first times where I've never seen a movie you're talking about. I don't think I've ever seen Black Coat's Daughter.
Don't waste your time.
I can't comment on it. But now you're telling me that I don't have to see it.
That's right. You don't have to. Well, and everybody, when it came out, everybody was talking about how, oh my God, you got to see The Black Coat's Daughter. I haven't seen a movie this scary in a decade. But no, it's fucking garbage. It's crap.
Interesting. So where we said in the overrated list, if you haven't seen the movie, go out and watch the movies. In this list, if you haven't seen the movie, you're fine.
Find something else to watch. Watch something from one of the other episodes.
You missed nothing. Yeah, you've missed nothing in your life.
Absolutely. or if you don't like my opinions, go watch it.
So there you go. In order just to fight against Rev, you could watch the movie and then fight against him. Even if you didn't like the movie and you agree with him, you should still just disagree with him.
That's exactly right, and I'm okay with that. All comers, come on, let's go.
Get in the comments, people. Get in the comments. So yeah, what about, like, were you just like, when you were watching it, just wasn't interesting,
It's
or
just
there was
boring
like
as shit, man.
it's boring as shit?
It's boring as
Sometimes
shit.
movies are just boring as shit.
It's just Shipko walking around in dark locations for like 2 hours. I like, okay, that's great. I mean, were the locations kind of creepy? Yeah, I guess, but like nothing fucking happened until the very end of the movie. It's like, ooh, look at this big twist ending. It's fucking bullshit. It sucked. I didn't give a shit about the twist. Like I said, literally, I watched it and I was like, wait, what? And I like had to go back and like rewind it 30 minutes. I was like, oh, okay, it's just stupid. Great.
Got it. Oh, I get it. It's dumb.
Exactly.
All right, well, contrast that with my number 7, which you've already touched on several times in this episode, which is Friday the 13th. And like I
Ooh.
said, the only reason that I disagreed with you in the first round is because I thought that it was entirely too raw. It belongs in number 7. Or number 5, number 6 or 7. Because for a movie that is touted as like one of the classic movies of like horror, right? This was nothing more than a studio's attempt to answer back to Halloween as fast as possible. There are only 2 good kills in the movie. The twist doesn't even really make sense in terms of everything that's going on. That's in the movie of having Pamela Voorhees be the killer. I agree with you completely that you have this 60-year-old woman just going around hiding in places so that she can have these easy kills. I mean, the only one good kill that's in the movie is when Kevin Bacon gets it with the arrow through his thorax, because you didn't really see that coming until it happened, right? And then the one good scene at the end, Ray jumps up out of the water. But again, a good ending scene does not make the movie good. I would argue that you can't see half the movie because they didn't invest in any lighting.
That is true
Like,
as well.
it is possible to make a horror movie with decent lighting. I think that we as an audience are smart enough to realize, oh, this scene is taking place in a darkened hallway, without having to actually have that hallway be like 90% black so you can't see shit that's happening in it.
Oh my god, 100% agree.
And a good example of that is Lights Out. And it's like Lights Out did that. Lights Out was a movie that, supposedly everything that happened was in that movie was supposed to be in the dark. Because if it didn't go to the dark, then nothing would happen. So that we as the audience recognize that and we realize, oh, it's just supposed to be dark, even though it's not 90% black on the screen. We can get it. Like, I'm sorry.
Because we're not fucking idiots.
Yeah, exactly. Raise your level, okay? We as the audience can do that.
It does hide a lot of sins, though. When you keep it in the black, when you keep it in the dark, and you can't see how shitty your movie is, sometimes that helps.
There you go. When you can't see your movie, you don't know if you're actually making the movie.
That's exactly right. Oh, maybe it was great. I just couldn't fucking see it,
There you go.
That's
Maybe that's my problem, right? I didn't go to film school, so I don't know how good the movie is because I don't understand the lighting choices in the movie.
No, I'm with you, man. That's a good one.
I'm telling you right now. See, we're at number 7. I'm coming in hot this episode. I am coming in hot, and it's only going to get hotter as the thing goes on.
Oh yeah, I've got a couple near the top that might get me killed. I'm expecting it.
Really excited. Okay, then you know what? I know, and I totally understand that, and I apologize to the audience. I know it seems like we're going through the list a bit faster in this one, but it's because I'm just so excited to hear what Rev has to say, and I'm like, yes, I'm done talking. It's his turn. Go now. Number 6, Rev, hit me.
Number 6 is Smile. I have to preface this one a little bit by saying I don't think this is one of the worst movies ever. The love that I saw for this movie was just not understandable to me, because the only really good scene in the movie was shown in the fucking trailer. There are some trailer scenes that are so good that they're still effective even when you know they're coming, but by including the scene with the girl leaning down, twisting her neck in the car in the trailer, it ruined the whole fucking thing. Smile isn't the worst movie I've ever seen by any means, but it felt like such a great idea with such great potential, and it squandered literally all of it. And the ending was utter nonsense, which would have pissed me off more if the rest of the movie didn't suck as well.
This is the one that I disagree with you on. Like, I very much enjoyed Smile. I thought it was a fine movie. I thought that...
I know you did.
Yeah, I know. I totally disagree with you on this one. I think that the unsettling creepiness of the smiles in which they were in the movie, like, I think that it naturally progresses to the way that it works out. It feeds on that. Maybe I shouldn't say this because I'm going to use it as a post argument to my next movie. But it does feed in that paranoia sense of, like, is what's really happening to me? And the psychologist questioning whether or not she herself is going crazy, but still rooted in the thing of reality. I do agree that the introduction of Kyle Gallner maybe wasn't necessarily necessary to the story.
Oh.
Yeah, but he needs to be at the end for the plot point in order for it to work. But what about the ending didn't you like? Did you like the fact that we saw the actual demon and what happened? Or
yeah, it felt like just chaos,
Hmm.
which, I mean, fine, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I just felt like it was kind of like it kind of came out of nowhere with the rest of the movie being relatively subdued and kind of creepy at times. The ending was just like, all right, here's your monster, rah, that's it. It was just like, here's the monster, we're gonna run down the hall in this old building. Okay, I guess, whatever. I mean, it didn't track with the whole rest of the movie. And for me, Smile was a not as good Truth or Dare, which I really enjoyed. It's a teen horror movie, but it's super fun and super creepy and super dumb and a lot of fun. Smile was that, but it tried to take itself too seriously, and I don't think that it accomplished what it was going for.
Very interesting. I don't know. I kind of have to disagree with you on this one because I feel like the minute that Cal Nuggar shows up at the cabin at the end of the movie, you're just like, it's like what's going to happen. You're like, oh shit, there it is. That's
Well, see, you shouldn't know what's going to happen. That's bad storytelling.
But you can see that I don't know. It's interesting because I actually really kind of like that movie a lot.
That's one of the reasons I included it on my list.
A lot is a strong word. I like that movie.
You thought it was decent.
I thought it was fine. I'm not gonna take it extra like some of the other movies that are coming up on my list.
Okay, well, what's coming up on your list? What's your number 6, Ken?
Speaking of taking an axe to something or a knife, more like it, The Invisible Man from 2020 is my number 6. The amount of people that were like, "Oh, this is one of the best remakes for The Invisible Man ever made, and this is one of the greatest movies, and it goes along with this, and it happens, and blah blah blah." And I'm watching it, I'm just like, I don't care. Like I thought it was actually pretty boring at most times. I didn't necessarily really get into it. I guess there's nothing that drew me into the whole movie. I didn't think that there was anything particularly really cool or inventive about the movie to make it that. The fact that it has a 92% critic score blows my fucking mind. 92%. Like, that means that just based off this, that the Invisible Man is better than The Shining. So think about that, right? Before you come after me in the comments. The Invisible Man 2020 was 9% better, according to people, than The Shining. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite movie. I guess I can't really pinpoint one thing about it. I guess I really enjoy the writing aspect to it, but that would have to be my number one complaint. I don't think Elizabeth Moss is necessarily bad in that movie. It just, there's a lot of things that happen where I'm just like, but why did that have to happen?
Yeah.
So like his brother was the killer because he tricked his brother into being the killer, or the brother really wanted to be the killer at the end of the movie to try to go after the family, and then introducing the sister and everything else. I don't know. It just, there's a lot of things that happen in the movie where I'm just like, why did that happen?
So, the first time I watched this, I completely agreed with you. I thought it was garbage. Like, I was so excited for it, especially being Lee Wanell, having half the team behind Saw. I thought it was going to be really good. And then I watched it and I just absolutely hated it. And then I did it last year, I believe, for Halloween. It was one of the movies in my 30 Days of Halloween or 31 Days of Halloween that I do for the website. And I enjoyed it a lot more. I am not an Elizabeth Moss fan at all. I think it's laughable at best that a Scientologist is doing stuff about advancing the rights of women, but I thought it was a pretty effective horror take on abuse, which is something that I'm pretty passionate about in general. So it's something that I thought they portrayed it pretty well. I think a lot of it is explained, like, you talked about his brother. I think a lot of that is explained because he's an abusive piece of shit who abuses everyone in his life, and that those sorts of abusers have control in ways that you don't really expect them to. And I thought there were some really cool scenes in the movie too, especially when he was invisible, that were pretty well done. I agree with you. It is probably overrated. I will give you that for sure. But I would encourage you to watch it again if it's been a while since you've seen it, because I enjoyed it a lot more the second time I watched it.
Interesting. It didn't speak up my alley. And to give you an idea, I did watch it with a couple other people and they both fell asleep.
Well, I think it's...
And it wasn't like late at night. It was like a Saturday afternoon.
It's just because you hate women. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's definitely what it is. I hate women.
He is on the record.
No, I don't. That's not canon. All right, we're not. That's not. That was me being facetious. I want to be very clear about that. Okay, now we're getting to top 5. This is where things are going to go off the rails. So I'm really curious, man. Hit me with the 5.
Okay, so the next 2 movies on my list are incredibly well-made movies. As movies, they're not bad. As horror movies, they are massively overrated and are movies that I find it incredibly hard to choose to watch. Number 5 is The Witch. I seriously do applaud the the Vavitch for several different pieces of the movie that I thought were done incredibly well. This is probably the closest to an Oscar-level horror movie that we've had in a long time. And yes, that does include It Chapter 1, Ken. Throwback to the previous episode, or to one of the previous episodes.
I'm visibly shaking.
Good. No, the cinematography was beautiful. Anya Taylor-Joy's acting was phenomenal, and the talking goat was creepy as hell, but holy fucking shit is this movie boring. It's set in the 1630s, and watching it made me feel like I lived then. By the end, I was cheering for cholera. That's all I have to say about that.
I'm going to hold off my comments until a little bit later.
Interesting.
In the episode. Suffice to say, as a preview to that little bit later, I couldn't agree with you.
Excellent.
Like, I was just, like, I agree with you. Just couldn't help with cholera. I would love to just be infected with dysentery so that I didn't have to watch the movie. This is the Oregon Trail. Give me the dysentery. That's all I'm going to say. Which leads me to my number 5, and this is going to be a hot one. I'm going to get comfort for this one. But my number 5 overrated, or what I think is a horror movie that I don't like that people like, is Hellraiser.
Oh no.
I don't like Hellraiser. I don't get it. It's such a dumb movie. If you take Pinhead out of that movie, the movie doesn't. I'm gonna say it right now. If you took Pinhead, which it pisses me off. It's such an iconic, well-made creature, well-made, like, horror movie iconic character with such a look, is in such a shitty movie because it doesn't make sense. Because let's just take the sequels out of the thing, and the reason that you had to make the sequels was in order to focus more on the box and to focus more on Pinhead, because those were the two things that never explained in number 1. If you don't solve the fucking puzzle box, then they don't come. So put the box down, right? And then people are going to say, oh, well, you learn in the sequels that it's people that want to be in order to torture, and then there's this whole sexual sadomasochism to it. Bullshit. That's in the sequel. We don't learn that until later, and then you had to make those movies in order to explain that. Because if you just take the first movie at face value for what it is, that movie's not that good. It's time that we collectively agree as a society that we evaluate things over time. Hellraiser, even though it has an amazing character in Pinhead, I agree with you 100% there. The overall movie is shit.
Wow. Okay. So let me address this. First off, I don't completely disagree. I do think Hellraiser is overrated to a certain extent, but I do have a couple of issues with some of the things that you said. First off, Pinhead is not the bad guy in Hellraiser. Frank is the bad guy in Hellraiser. And they do explain a good bit of the sexual sadism piece of the box in the beginning of Hellraiser. They do kind of go over that a little bit. It is definitely much, much more well done in the book. I don't know if you've read The Hellbound Heart, but it is stellar. I mean, all Clive Barker's stellar, but the movie is definitely kind of confusing. It's really weird. It could have been done better, and I actually enjoy several of the sequels a lot more than the original one, except for Hellraiser 2, because Hellraiser 2 fucking blows. But I like it perfectly fine. It's certainly not a legendary movie the way that everybody says, so I'll give it to you there.
I'm sorry, but okay, fine. You're right, because I don't mean to say that Pinhead's the bad guy. That's
sure.
I was more saying, like, just as an iconic horror character. Like, you look at iconic horror characters, whether it be Ghostface, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, or like Michael Myers, right? I would argue that in the pantheon of those characters, Pinhead is just as much up there. So it just and all of those movies that those people appear in, like Friday the 13th Part 2, is much better than Part 1. I'd rather much watch that movie. Like, Part 1 didn't really exist, as we've already talked about that, and just have Jason be the first killer. The Halloween, as we've already talked about, is my number 2, your number 1 of best movie ever made, best horror movie ever made. The Nightmare on Elm Street, I love. I know that you like it as well. Maybe I like it a little bit more than you, but I know you do like it, and you know how much I love Scream. But it's like, for such an iconic character to come from a movie that I'm just like, meh, at best.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
It just kind of just angers me, and then fills me with this ranting rage in which I'm going at my number 5 right now.
Fair enough.
But again, we've watched the movie. If you watch the movie, one of my favorite movies, and an absolutely hilarious movie, not a horror movie, which is Forgetting Sarah Marshall. There's a scene in that movie where Russell Brand, everybody is at the dinner table, and they're talking about the movie that she did, and the movie was about a haunted cell phone, right? And they're just making fun of that movie, of just like, well, if it's a haunted cell phone, just take the battery out, or if it's a haunted cell phone, just don't pick it up, right? It's the same thing with Hellraiser. If there's a haunted box that causes the Cenobites to come for you to get tortured in hell, then don't solve the fucking box. At the end of the day.
In the original Hellraiser, that was kind of the point, man. He was wanting that. That's why he solved the box. He searched it down in fucking Egypt or wherever the fuck he found it, and he wanted to solve the box so that he could release them. He didn't understand that there are tortures beyond your mortal comprehension, or whatever the fuck it is he says.
That we have such wonderful sights to show you. That is actually one of my favorite lines to say to.
See, and that's the reason. Honestly, that's the reason why Hellraiser shouldn't be on this list, is because Pinhead is the fucking man, and even in the beginning, his lines were outstanding. The "I'll tear your soul apart" shit, man.
Yeah, it's. I mean, again, but that's also what leads me to the rage of it, is the fact that you have such a great character with amazing dialogue written for that character in order to hammer home who he is as a character and everything else, and he acts the hell out of it too, right? To be in such a meh movie at best. All I'm saying is when people are just like, "Oh yeah, Hellraiser," I'm again that asshole that turns around and is just like, "Wasn't that good? Wasn't that good? It needs to be reevaluated."
Fair enough. I'll give you that. I don't think it's as good as a lot of people think it is. I will definitely give you that.
That's why, and that was the whole point of the list. It was just like, I told you, top 5 are just going to come to me. I already knew that. These are the movies that I'm just like, people put on their list that they're like, "Oh, these are the best horror movies that have come out, the last blah, blah, blah." And I'm just like, no, that's not true. Okay,
Fair enough.
which leads me to your number 4.
Number 4. This one is likely going to make some people mad. Some people probably agree with me. Number 4, I have Rosemary's Baby. I completely acknowledge the technical achievements of this movie. Roman Polanski is almost as good at directing as he is at being a rapist, but that's literally all this film has going for it. You're going to have to cut that one.
I'm not going to.
Good. I don't think you should. I don't think you should, because fuck Roman Polanski.
That's like 2 hot takes in one thing. But yes, you're absolutely correct. I mean, you are absolutely correct.
It's a super predictable movie, and I feel like it would have been even at the time. I think Mia Farrow is fucking obnoxious, and I feel like she just makes random horrified faces throughout most of the movie. It's ridiculously slow. There's very little payoff, and it's like 45 minutes longer than it should be. This movie is 2 hours and 17 minutes long. That is insane. For the story it's trying to tell, that's insane. The Satan sex scene, kind of cool. The rest of the movie fucking blows.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Honestly, you're not going to get an argument from me on this one. It's not on my list personally, but I actually don't think that there's anything wrong with what you said.
That's right, because I'm always fucking right, man.
Well, let's not get too crazy about that, because we just saw that we saw some of your opinions on the ones that I already had on here, but and we already heard those. All right. But yes, I could totally see where you're coming from. Like Rosemary's Baby, for as what people say that it is supposed to be or is, it's not. It's actually not.
Yes, agreed completely.
Yeah.
It's not a good movie.
It's just not. It's a movie that exists in the world, and if you happen to like it, great. But honestly, it's not. It doesn't belong in the panoply of amazing horror movies or dealing on anybody's top 20 list ever made.
Panoply. That's a great fucking word, man.
So I'm just saying, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct.
Thank you much.
My number 4 is a bit different, but kind of also the same, but a bit different. This one people might come from me as well, because I've seen people talk about this movie like it is the second fucking coming of movies, which actually makes sense because there is an angel in the movie at the end of it. But my number 4 is called A Dark Song.
Oh my goodness.
A Dark Song is not a good movie. It is a boring ass movie. I watched it, and the minute it was over, I said, "The fuck did I just want? I want my life back. I want that time returned to me. I would like for somebody to come and invent some sort of time machine so that I could go back to myself at that time, create the paradox. I am willing to mess with the space-time continuum and to create the paradox to have me not having to watch that movie." I did not like this movie. That is my thinking of this movie. I do not understand why it has a 91% critic score. I do not understand why it is on so many people's lists of the best horror movies, or even not even just horror. Like some people have it on the movie, like their best movies list of like the last 20 years. Dark Song, out, just out. Make it go dark by turning the TV off. That's my point.
It's fucking garbage, man. Dark Song fucking sucks.
It sucks. It is such a terrible movie.
It is a bad movie. I'll tell you what, I actually enjoyed one that's almost exactly the same called From Black with Anna Camp in it from Pitch Perfect. It's very similar to A Dark Song, just a little bit less broody and terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I'm 100% agreement with you. A Dark Song fucking sucked. I hated it. I was expecting so much.
It's terrible. You would expect this so much because and I understand the emotional journey that she goes through, blah 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 blah. There are tons of other horror movies where people go through emotional journeys that are presented in a way that's actually entertaining to watch.
100%. Holy shit. So it made a snail's pace look like it was running the fucking Indy 500. It's a fucking terrible movie.
This movie is not entertaining, right? It's just
terrible movie. No disagreement.
Roll the credits already. I'm there. All right. Well, if that's my number 4, what's your number 3?
Okay, this one is actually probably going to make some people really mad, but I'm sorry, it needs to be said. Number 3 is The Crow. It is not a good movie, and I'm tired of pretending that it is. I understand this movie means a lot to a lot of people, and I'm certainly not trying to take that away from them. That's great for them. There is a lot of truth to the meme that The Crow is just RoboCop for goths, but I also understand that there's more to it than that as well. I get it. Unfortunately, it's just not particularly well done. It's largely boring, and I genuinely think this movie would have faded completely from cultural memory if Brandon Lee didn't get shot, and it would have been a better movie if they left that scene in. I'm just saying.
Holy shit.
Yeah, you asked for hot takes,
I'm
man.
gonna have to cut that entire thing in order for
leave it in.
To just survive. You're gonna get so much blowback. People,
I told you I'm gonna get some death threats here.
Listen, everybody who's listening, people watch it, women, men, children. I don't know why you would let your children listen to the podcast, but if you do, great, good on you. We'll take all the listens that we can. It doesn't matter to me, gender, what you are. I am separating myself from Rev's opinion on this movie. All right? I don't mind The Crow. I think The Crow is a perfectly fine film. I agree with you. I think that people overhype it for what it is, right? But you know what? At the end of the day, Rev, it can't rain all the time.
The Crow sucks. It felt like it was raining all the goddamn time when I was watching that fucking movie.
Oh my god. Oh, that's funny.
You know what? And I told you I'm going to get some death threats. My number 2 at least is probably going to get me a few more.
Just wait until
we'll go from
my
there.
number 1. Okay. Because I think the number 1 is going to be. We're gonna anyway. All right. My number 3 is the Vitch. Is the double V witch. The Vitch. You know, because again, why not get cute with the title of your dumbass boring movie? Like because that's the only thing that it has going for it. Honestly, we watched that movie, and again, I watched that movie because I saw it so many lists. It was just like, oh, this is one of the best horror movies that came out in the last 10 years. This is one of the best horror movies that came out of this year. It's just like, all right, if everybody loves this movie, I have to watch it just to see what everybody's talking about and the hype for it. And I just sat there waiting for anything to happen. Because as we've already established in this, at least in my thinking, 2 good scenes do not a movie make. You can have the most amazing scene in the world. I don't give a shit. If it's in a bad movie, that movie is still bad. All right? And The Vitch is a perfect example of that. Nothing happens in this movie. It is a boring as shit movie. There's no reason to watch or even start watching it, because at the end of the movie, you're just going to be like, that's it? ¿Por qué? And you're going to think, why did I watch this movie?
Yes, but Ken, wouldst thou like to live deliciously? You know what would be living deliciously?
Not watching
this fucking movie.
Again.
Would be.
It's a matter of, I want not a refund for my money back. I want a refund for my time back. Give me that time in my life back, because I could have spent another 2 hours doing something completely different or watching a much better movie like The Crow.
If I was transported back to the 1930s in the Great Depression, I would have had a better time than watching The Witch.
I would rather be in a John Steinbeck novel than watch the fucking Witch.
Grapes of Wrath.
Talk about wrath. There's a wrath that I felt watching this movie because everybody said it was a goddamn good movie. All right. What's your number 2?
My number 2, I just fucking gotta say it. My number 2 is Black Christmas. Black Christmas is seen as everything from the best Christmas horror movie ever to the first slasher movie ever. It is neither, and it fucking sucks. The killer is dumb, the characters are dumb, it's very rarely scary, and the whole abortion subplot is dumb as fuck. There's zero resolution to the whole fucking movie, which could have been a plus, but instead just feels lazy, and it feels like the movie that was trying to exist in a slasher genre that didn't really exist completely. It has more in common with giallo than slashers, and part of that is that a lot of it doesn't make any fucking sense. Olivia Hussey is one of the most hateable main characters in horror, and the only good thing about this movie is the completely unhinged drunk performance from Margot Kidder.
That's fair.
It fucking sucks, man.
All of it
And
is a fair
I will.
criticism, and you're right. Margot Kidder is just a drunk, crazy person. Is this before or after she went insane? Is this? When would this?
It's probably why she went on insane, because this movie fucking sucks.
When did this come out? What is this? 19? It's like
70s.
in the 70s, right? 74. Yeah, so 74. Just want to make sure that we're talking about the 74 film.
Yes, and I will go as far as to say that the middle remake, the one with the girl from Buffy, what's her name?
Oh, Michelle Trachtenberger.
Yes, Michelle Trachtenberg. The middle remake with Michelle Trachtenberg is better than the original. It's stupid. It's dumb as fuck. Don't get me wrong. The 1998 or whatever the hell it was remake is a terrible movie, but it's so much fucking fun. It's way better than the original one.
Interesting. You're not going to get an argument from me on this one because I didn't think that it was that special either.
It's always talked about as being one of the best movies ever made, and it fucking blows.
You're absolutely right. There's a lot of movies that are talked about the best movie ever made, and the more that I was thinking about, the more I'm like, none of these movies are the best movies ever made. If you look at a top 20 list, all right, I'm going to venture a guess to say that you can find at least 4 movies on any top 20 list where you're like, fuck is that doing on there?
Yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of times that happens with horror too, and I understand different things scare different people. I get that. I understand that horror is entirely subjective. Objectively, Black Christmas sucks.
But, yeah. But Black Christmas scares no
That's
one.
right.
That's a bit different than my number 2. My number 2 is actually pretty funny because you already mentioned this movie in a previous episode when we did the horror movie posters. And you had that horror movie poster, I believe, as your number 2 or close to it.
No.
But my number 2 is It Comes at Night.
Okay.
This movie was terrible. Nothing happened. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. It's not that I didn't understand it. Let me rephrase. Let me start over again. Nothing happened in this movie. This movie again was boring as shit. You infer that there's a virus that goes out in the world, and that if you get sick, you're going to infect everybody around you. And then you get the people that come into the house, and oh my god, the kid who's never had sex before is a virgin because he's lived under the house, starts feeling attraction to the wife, and the wife is being really creeped out. And then the family starts getting creeped out. But then he got exposed by his dad. So is he having a fever? Nothing. This movie is not that good. It's not that good. It's boring as shit. We literally were watching the movie, and the entire time that we're watching it, we're just like, is anything going to fucking happen? If anything, then don't label it as a horror movie, because it's not a horror movie. It's a drama at best.
And I think I mentioned when I mentioned this poster, I still haven't seen it. Because I kind of assumed that was going to be the case. The poster is incredible, and I was excited for it, and then it came out and just something happened, and I heard people saying, "Oh, this is a boring movie," and I just missed it.
See, I know, and when you said the poster, because I agree with you, the poster is pretty cool. Like, it made you want to watch the movie, because that's exactly what made me want to watch the movie. You were absolutely 100% correct on the poster. The fact that there's a dog just barking at darkness at night, and the light coming from the background, it's an amazing poster. But the movie itself is terrible. It's just god fucking awful. And there's no reason to watch this movie or to be incredibly entertained by this movie, because nothing fucking happens.
I believe you entirely. I still want to watch it.
But you're still going to watch it for sure, because then you can disagree with me.
I'll be like, this is the best movie I've ever seen in my life.
The best movie. He's gonna text me on the phone and be like, what are you talking about? It Comes at Night. It comes at the Oscars. This movie's the best.
This dog should win an Emmy.
Anyway, It Comes at Night, my number 2 and again, 88% critic score. 88%, which means that this movie, the It Comes at Night is 18% better than Hellraiser. So if you liked Hellraiser, if you disagreed with me about Hellraiser's a 70% critic score in Rotten Tomatoes. This movie, It Comes at Night, 88%.
That's crazy.
That's what's fucking insane about this. All right, Rev, hit me up with your
dishonorable mentions. These are here because I think they're wildly overrated, but none of them are particularly bad movies. I don't know that they deserve their reputations. They're just movies that are seen to be among the best and are largely just sort of okay, I guess. My 3 dishonorable mentions today are Sleepaway Camp, Suspiria, and The Exorcist.
Well, 2 of those I agree with you with. The third one,
I know you'd have a problem with The Exorcist being included there. I knew you'd have an issue with that.
At least it didn't make the top 10.
That's true. It didn't make the top 10, and it didn't partly because I thought that you would fly to me and kick my ass.
You're not wrong. All right, I'm already in a hot mood. All right, I'm
already coming Jesus Christ.
Hot, so I agree with you. Sleepaway Camp. You're right. A twist ending does not a major motion picture make. Like, it does not make it a good movie just because of the twist ending. And the most people remember about that movie is pretty much they forget the first 90% of that movie and just remember the last 10.
Yeah, and I love Felissa Rose to death too, and I think she's amazing. She's supposedly one of the sweetest people in the whole genre, and she was good in it, I guess. So she didn't fucking say anything either. So like, she was good as a little girl, but like, that's kind of it, I don't know. It's just it was weird. It's a weird movie too. It's really off-putting. Like a lot of the things that happen, they've got these like actual children doing very unchildren-like things. I don't know. It made me uncomfortable.
What was your second one?
Suspiria.
Suspiria is another one where it's just like, I get it, it's on people's list, but I think the reason that it's on people's list is again, is because it's that European, like we've talked about this before in the past, that when you watch the movie, you're just like, is this really that good? And you have to question yourself the entire time. Because I think that a lot of people just put it on the list because they're like, oh, we would have an art house.
And it's beautiful, and I believe it was actually on my 10 best ever made. So it's kind of weird that it's an honorable mention on this one. But I think that it's a beautiful movie, and I appreciate its value cinematically. And if you're talking about like a good movie, it is a good movie, well made, all the pieces are together. It's just not very entertaining. And people act like it's like top 3 horror movies ever made, top 10 movies ever made, and it's just not.
Well, you could mirror the two. It's beautifully overrated.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. What you got for your honorable mentions, Ken?
We already talked about The Omen. That was one, and this one people are going to come from in the comments, but I'm going to justify it, and I have to stand by it. Oh, we're not done with The Exorcist.
Okay, all right.
I need you to explain to me why you think that movie is like what didn't you like about that movie? Because that movie has an amazing story. I think that movie is beautifully, actually a well-written movie in terms of the way that they wrote the devil character as itself, being indelt into the girl, the crisis of faith for Father Damien, the coming back and the evil spiritual battle that's going back and forth. I think that you might say that there's some overacting in the movie. I'm not going to disagree with you on that, but I think the movie's highly entertaining.
I actually don't think the acting was bad. I thought pretty much everybody in The Exorcist was really good. And again, this isn't saying it's a bad movie. I just think it's largely overrated for a couple of different reasons. Number one, Father Damien, yeah, I agree, crisis of faith, but they didn't hardly fucking talk about him. He was barely in the movie compared to everything else that's going on. And reading the book, his character was a lot more in depth. And they dealt a lot more with, why he was having the crisis of faith, what was going on, how he felt, those internal factors, all that stuff was kind of combined together in the book to make it make a lot more sense. In the movie, he's not in it enough for his character to be having the crisis that he's having and for the movie to focus on him the way that it did. The rest of it, I think it's really slow. I think the first half of the movie, I appreciate why it's there, and I understand that it's dealing with like the science versus faith piece of it, and I appreciate that. I think that was really well done, but it was also really fucking long. I felt like you probably could have cut maybe 30 minutes off the movie-ish, and it probably would have been better. I think it's just, I don't know, man, for being what a lot of people say is the best horror movie ever made, it's just not. And again, I don't think it is. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's certainly not. I'm not even saying it's a bad horror movie. It's not. But if you're talking overrated, it has to be pretty close to the top of the list.
I think that the way that I feel about The Exorcist, and I could be wrong about this because I don't actually know your opinions on this movie, but the way that I feel about The Exorcist being an honorable mention on this list, you're going to feel the same way about my honorable mention, which, and again, people are going to come for me about this one, but this one almost didn't make the list for me, but then I was just like, no, I kind of like it too much for it to make the list, but I do believe that it's overrated. It's X.
Oh, God. Yeah, I got to come for you there. X was fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's 94% critic score for a porn movie that has 15 minutes of horror at the end.
Because that's what it's fucking about, man.
I understand that's what it's about, but that's not what I signed up for.
Oh, like, Buffy would have been great if it wasn't for all these fucking vampires.
No, first of all, there's nothing in that movie that said that movie's going to be 90% porn. The trailer doesn't make that movie be 90% porn. That movie is 90% straight up porn.
It's literally called X.
25 minutes of it going on there. I'm not saying that I dislike the movie. I actually like the movie, right? But the movie works well within the trilogy of the Mia Goth films. Like, I'm very excited for Maxine when it comes out. I very much enjoyed Pearl, and I enjoyed X more because of Pearl. I think that as a standalone film, like if this movie was made just by itself, right, that there's more elements of the movie that make it not horror than horror.
Yeah, but Empire Strikes Back is shit by itself too.
No, that's not true at all.
You can't.
That is absolutely not true. The fucker did you just say? The fuck did you just say?
If you took
Empire Strikes Back as a standalone movie is amazing.
Empire Strikes Back as a standalone movie makes no sense.
Oh my God, that is so not true. You actually, I can't even. I can that. Oh my God, even from the beginning of that movie where they're protecting the hot planet from the invading empire, you get the two sides. You know that there's rebels and there's empire based off the first 10 minutes of that movie. You understand that Luke has the Force powers, which sets up the characters in order for him to go learn it, right? You get that he's on a mystical journey where his friends are off trying to trust us here while running from the empire. Through that, you have the asteroid chase in that movie. You got Han Solo being frozen in carbonite in the movie, which is the love triangle between him, Carrie, and you know and Mark. You got then the battle between the good and evil forces on Bespin at the end of the movie. My God, sir, you know what? I demand you take that back.
Okay, you know what?
I demand you take back that Empire is not a good standalone
No.
movie.
I'm not
It is
saying.
the best Star Wars movie next to Rogue One ever made.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, first off, you disgust me. No. Okay, let me rephrase. Let me backtrack a little bit. X is a better comparison to Return of the Jedi than it is to Empire Strikes Back, because X will end up being the third movie in the series. Fine. Okay.
Fine.
No, Empire. This was not at all, because I fucking love X. So first off, my comparison to this to Empire Strikes Back is not a strike on Empire Strikes Back to me. You're the one that doesn't like X. I fucking loved X. So
I didn't say that. I said I liked X just fine, which is why it didn't make the list. I just thought that it was outright signed up. So
what did
a
you
lot of my
think? What did you think the movie was about?
I thought the movie was going to be a horror movie. There's going to be a slasher movie.
It was a
But it
slasher
didn't end up
movie.
being it was a slasher movie. The last 20 minutes of the movie, I had to sit through 45 minutes of useless porn.
Dude, again, you could not be more wrong.
Okay.
X is fucking amazing. Like, you're like, oh, I didn't think this movie was going to be about people trying to film a porn. What did you think it was going to be about?
Again, I'm not saying that the movie was bad, and I'm not saying, and I did like the movie. I just said that. I think I like it better within the broader sense of the trilogy. I will say that. I do not believe that it deserves a 94% critic score.
Oh, God.
So I just believe that it's one of an honorable mention of a movie that's kind of overrated. That's all my point.
You're killing me, man.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Well, that's the same way that you feel about The Exorcist. So, you know what? We're even, sir.
All right, fine.
We're even.
Fine. Hey, at least you didn't include it like so high on your list. I'll give you that.
I wouldn't even put it on my list. I didn't even put it on my list.
All right.
But this Empire is egregious.
Settle down, Ken. Settle down.
Okay, I am so curious as to your number one, because I think you know what my number one is.
I don't actually. I have no fucking clue.
In the past.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God, I do. I hate you so
think
much.
You know what my number one is. So I think I'm really excited to hear your number one.
Oh, my God. People, listen. This is going to get raucous. This is going to... We're going to have issues here, because I do know what your number one is, and I can't wait to hear you explain yourself, you piece of shit.
Okay. All right. Trust me. It's going to happen.
Okay. All right. We'll do my number one first, and then you can disappoint all of America, okay? My number one is Interview with a Vampire. I hate this movie so damn much. Every single
movie?
I don't fucking know. But okay, every single thing about this movie is garbage. I honestly was racking my brain trying to think about something positive to say about this movie, and I couldn't even come up with any specific negatives, because the whole fucking movie sucks. From the acting to the story to the ambiance, there is literally not a single good thing about this movie. Anne Rice in general blows, but Interview with a Vampire is a cacophony of suck. I don't know that I've ever seen any movie that I immediately hated with such intensity as I did Interview with a Vampire. And to think that this is a cult classic movie that so many people base their whole fucking lives around, it's disgusting. Disgusting.
You know, honestly, I didn't put it on my list because I thought that it wasn't a horror movie. Like, I would consider Jurassic Park more of a horror movie than Interview with a Vampire.
I would consider Jurassic Park more of a horror movie than Interview with a Vampire, but it's got vampires in it, so it can't not be a horror movie.
I will say that as a launching point for Kirsten Dunst, I did appreciate the film.
Yes, Kirsten Dunst was good.
She's a timeless treasure. But
I agree.
But I agree with you about everything else. Everything else about that movie.
God, it's so fucking bad.
Oh my God, it's so bad. It needed to lean way more like the series, the TV series. I don't know if you've watched it.
Absolutely not,
because you don't like that. The TV series isn't actually that bad.
I will not watch it. No fucking way.
I completely. If that's, I mean, I got no qualms about that, because I know that you're. I mean, yes, I get it. I totally get it. But I did watch the first season, and I think that they're leaning more into the time period, the sexual relationship between Louis and Lestat, and just the back and forth. I thought was a little bit more emotional than what they touched on in the film. And I think that the film was made during a time where they couldn't get deeper into that homoeroticism and the homosexual nature of their thing, and that it suffered greatly because if you watch, well, I mean, actually, all of Anne Rice's movies are not that good. Like, I didn't really care for fucking Queen of the Damned.
Yeah,
The only
okay,
reason why
so
I think people like that movie is because
this
the blood
was
is in it.
no, people don't fucking like Queen of the Damned. It's said to be one of the worst movies ever made.
That's true too.
But
So-
here's the thing, and that actually was going to be what I was going to say next. Interview with the Vampire. I did not know when I went to watch Queen of the Damned that it was Anne Rice or that it had anything to do with Interview with a Vampire. So Interview with a Vampire ruined 2 fucking movies for me. So that movie is so bad it makes other movies suck.
You're not wrong.
It's such a
You're
fucking
not
terrible.
wrong.
I've never seen a movie that was so bad it made me that angry. Like that was one of the things. I got to the end and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this movie is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. How the fuck is this something people love so much?
I think it's got a great cast, but not for that movie. And it's like the great cast is just judged more about what came after the products that they did after. And when you look at the cast of that movie, sans Christian Slater, let's not get too crazy, because a lot of his good movies were before this movie. But
Well, same with
like
Tom
you-
Cruise.
Well, I think that Tom Cruise had a couple of good roles that he's performed since.
Well,
Interview with
sure,
Vampire,
yeah.
just a couple.
Sure,
But
sure.
like Brad Pitt and Antonio Banderas and Kirsten Dunst. I mean, it's just like I said, it's got a cast of thousands for just what that movie was, which was not good.
That's right. It's that movie. It could be the star of movies I don't care about.
Well, since we didn't get a chance to argue a lot about your number one, I have a feeling that we're going to be debating a
Oh
lot
fuck!
about
Bring it
my
on,
number
Ken.
one. The number one most overrated horror movie that I do not like that everybody loves is called It Follows. That's right, fucking America. It Follows is not that good of a movie. And it's a time that we as a nation wake the fuck up and realize it. It Follows is not that good. It Follows is actually a pretty terrible movie when you think about it because it doesn't make sense. In order for horror movies to make sense, if you're going to have an entity killer, whether it be a Pinhead or a Michael or a Freddy or a Jason, there have to be rules. There are rules in which that entity has to exist within the movie so that you as characters or you as people that are watching the movie can figure out how to outsmart the entity and then therefore do it. And in this movie, the entity has no fucking rules. It just makes it up as it goes along. There's no consistency to it. It doesn't make sense in that regard. Let's walk through it piece by piece. Exhibit number 1. You have such an amazing opening with the girl running out of the house, the camera doing the 360 spins, and then she ends up on the beach. Boom, I am all in. Then you go to scene number 2 where she goes on the date. In the theater, her date turns around and says, oh, like that old woman dressed in the old yellow flowers. And she's like, oh, I don't see that. And he's like, oh, we should go. And they calmly walk out of the theater, not run. Remember, this is the entity that only he can see, which is coming to kill him because he had sex with somebody else and he knows that the entity exists. He's not moving fast. He calmly takes her out of the theater. They go and have sex. And instead of him getting the fuck out of Dodge, he ties her to a wheelchair so that she can see the entity. The entity is walking towards them. He takes her home, presumably within the small town in which she lives. So therefore, they're not that far. Then it takes 2 whole fucking days for the entity to find her. But not the next day, the end of the next day where her friends are there to protect her and he walks through the door. Then they run to a beach far away. All of a sudden, the entity is there. It's not walking anymore. It could time travel. It travels so fast and then comes up on them. So what does she do to get rid of it? She has sex with somebody else. That guy that she has sex with took 3 days. 3 days for that entity to come back in order to kill her. So then she goes and drives 5 towns over, has sex with 2 people on a fucking raft in order to pass on to them. In the meantime, you learn that the only thing that this entity has is a sexually transmitted disease because you slept with somebody that had it. And the rules are specifically stated at that point that the entity comes after you for having sex. Okay, not for having sex, but because you had sex with that person and they're coming after you. But if you have sex with somebody else, they go after that person. And once that person is dead, it comes back after you. So in the movie chronologically, it doesn't make any sense. Time does not exist in this movie because the entity either has warping powers in order to move faster or slower whenever the fuck the entity wants to. In that regard of what's going on, then therefore, the people that die in that movie are the people that she sleeps with, which is fine. You can consider her a piece of shit, and there's more questionability. And if you have this and you pass on to somebody else without telling them, you can say that the guy who she had sex with consensually, it's not it's not a forced upon or a rape situation. It's a consensual sex that at least he told her that this entity existed, whereas she didn't presumably tell anybody except for the one guy that she slept with, who the one guy wanted, her friend wanted to just sleep with her and was just like, I'll take whatever comes after me. I just want to have sex with you. And then at the end, she has sex with the best friend, and then the best friend and her are walking down for a open ending. Woo! Like, this movie sucks. It's not that good. We need to recognize it. It doesn't make any sense. The entity doesn't make any sense. If we analyze that movie, and I looked it up, even the director of the movie had to come out and say, well, maybe the entity has more superpowers than we touched upon in the movie. If that's the way that you have to justify the writing of your film in order to lay that kind of ridiculous pipe, because afterwards people are like, oh, well, that doesn't really make sense, then therefore the movie was not written that well chronologically. That's my point. Case closed. The defense rests.
Ken, I could have watched the movie again and all the fucking time that you rambled on about this shit. Ken,
I came in. I told you I was coming hot on this one. This one, I will die on this hill.
You
that
can
It Follows
die.
is not that good. It is not that good of a movie. And if you analyze it and look at it, it doesn't make any sense. And there are other movies in the pantheon of movies world that we consider to be good movies and that we consider to be bad movies. People are like, well, the reason I don't like it is that it doesn't make any sense. So we agree are bad movies that don't make any sense. But It Follows gets a fucking pass because for some strange reason, everybody loves this movie. It's at the top of everybody's list for who knows God why.
Well, I'll tell you why, Ken. Because It Follows is one of the best indie horror movies made in the last 20 years.
I can't even.
Look, here's the deal. I understand some of the criticisms. I'll give you some of them. I actually wasn't a huge fan of the third act of the movie, but the first two acts are so effectively well done and so scary and so well crafted that even if the third act just was awful, which it wasn't, even if the third act was awful, it still would have been one of the best movies, one of the best indie movies made in the last 20 years. I think the thing that you're missing about this movie is that there's so much of it that is meaningful in a way that most movies aren't. This isn't just a slasher movie. It's not just a supernatural movie. It's a direct response to trauma, and it's a direct response to how people handle that trauma. And I think that's one of the things about the main girl. I can't remember her name. I think that's one of the things about the main girl is, yes, some of the things that she did absolutely made her a piece of shit. And I think that's kind of the point. Kind of the point of the movie is that some of the ways that people react to trauma aren't healthy. They're not good. They're not kind. They make them a shitty person, but it's how they are personally trying to handle the trauma that's going on. So I understand where you're coming from to a certain extent, but I also think it's short-sighted. It's looking at this movie as if it's got a great rating, so it's one of the best movies of all time. When if you look at this with a super small budget, the super small indie production, it's fucking great, man. You're crazy.
I'm not crazy. Just because this movie has a small budget and that people go crazy for this movie does not necessarily make it a good movie.
That's true. It's a good movie regardless.
I'm sorry. Jay as a character, not even as a character. I'm saying like it literally as a horror movie lover, as somebody who loves horror movies. Part of the fun of watching a horror movie is not just watching people get killed in creative ways. It's not just watching the action that's on the screen or the drama that's presented between two characters or even well-written scripts. Part of the fun of watching a horror movie is thinking about what you would do as if this situation was happening to you. And unfortunately, with this one, there's no way to outdo it. You've created the most supernatural thing in the world in order that it doesn't matter what the fuck happens, that the only way to not do it is to not have sex. Or if you do have sex, then to continue having sex with literally everybody in America so that there's no way for it to ever come back to you because there's no way to get out of it. There's no rules. You've created no structure for this evil entity force in order to exist in the world.
That's exactly right.
Sorry.
You're exactly right. It's
bullshit.
almost like
bullshit.
It is almost like trauma is unpredictable and never really goes away. And it doesn't matter what you do, and it doesn't matter how you treat it, and it doesn't matter. Look, again, I'm not agreeing. I'm not saying it's like the perfect movie. That's not at all what I'm saying. But the points were there to be made. All of the critiques that you have of this movie, all the things that you're saying make perfect sense within that context. Are the rules hard and fast? No, they're not. There are some things that do seem to be a little bit not as what's the best way to say it? There are some things that aren't as straightforward as they first appear in the movie. I totally agree with that. But if you look at it as a lens through which to view trauma, that makes total sense. That totally tracks. It's not the same for everybody.
But the trauma that you're talking about is the entity. It's not like she's dealing with something that causes her to have an innocent sexual encounter with somebody because she wants to. Like, all she wants to do is have sex. There's nothing wrong with that. She's not suffering from anything. She's not trying to escape anything. She just has sex with somebody because it's a consensual thing. The trauma comes after her having sex in terms of the entity, which is something that, and then you're just dealing with the entity. And that's just like saying, well, the trauma for Laurie is the fact that Michael Myers came back to town on Halloween night, and that's the trauma that she has to deal with. No, it's just something that she has to deal with, because that's the structure of the horror movie.
That's true, but if you look at the sex with someone who was misrepresenting themselves in the way that is something that is kind of determined to be basically rape nowadays, you're essentially looking at a woman who was traumatized because of a rape, and it's not a
no. Wait a minute. Did he misrepresent himself?
Yes.
Well, hang on a second. Is he, by saying that his name was something different, then yes, he misrepresented himself?
No, but by having sex with her so he could pass along a supernatural sex demon, he was misrepresenting his intentions.
But then why, in that case, if you're passing along the supernatural sex demon, right? If you're going to be the biggest piece of shit in order to do that, why not go the nth degree and not tell her that the sex demon exists? Why tie her to a wheelchair, have her watch the entity walk towards her, then at that point, again, calmly leave? This entity has the ability to cripple you and turn you inside out. It's not inside out in terms of body mass, but like just kill you in such a horrific way, right? We learned that by the other two bodies that are found. But instead of fleeing or saying like, holy shit, I'm sorry I did this to you, blah, 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 which he kind of does apologize later in the film, but not saying I'm sorry. But he does explain it to her. Like, at this point, they're not fleeing. They're not running. They're just calmly existing within a world of this coming after her. Like, I'm sorry,
because
it literally, this movie, it does not make any sense.
They do that.
I am not the only one who thinks that.
No, you're not the only one who thinks that. You're not the only one who thinks it. But they did that. He tied her up and did all that stuff as a creative way to use some exposition in a movie. This isn't real life. At the end of the day, it is ultimately a movie. But this movie has an 83 Metacritic score. I totally agree that not all critics are right, and that a lot. I mean, that's the whole fucking point of this list.
It has a Rotten Tomatoes 95. It is a 95 critic score. This is the highest rated movie on my list
because it's a great fucking movie, Ken.
It's not. It's so overrated. It's so not. It's not. I can't even. I mean, I've just laid out plot point by plot point why this movie isn't that great and how it makes no sense whatsoever. I'm and that's what I'm sticking by.
and I hand wave your explanations.
And I hand wave your hand wave. I dismiss you with a certain bah.
Look, like I said, to each their own. You're just wrong.
This is fun.
We have fun, don't we?
This is one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, me too.
I don't get a chance to rant about It Follows a lot, but when I do,
you know what's funny is that you're absolutely right in what you said in the beginning of the episode. You're such a laid back dude. I am too. We're both such laid back people that it's so interesting to see us get like flustered.
Yeah, it's like we don't care about things that actually happen in real life or like the actual real life things around us. But when it comes to movies, my God, you better watch that. But no, like but it was like, yeah, again, it's just like one of those things where just like, world events happen. It's just like, well, that happened and we have to exist within the world. But it's like for some reason with me, and it's not just horror movies, it's with movies in general. Some of the most fun and intense conversations that I have is just arguing about movies. And what really is absurd about it is the fact that we're just arguing opinions. And it's like everybody has their own opinion, and it's like but you're somehow attached to it so personally that you kind of want to change their opinion. And so then you get a little bit more heated within the debate because now you're taking it seriously because it's like, no, you need to agree with me.
Well, exactly. What good is an opinion?
Right. It's not like we're agreeing about something that actually matters within the world around us.
That's
right?
right.
It's not like we're sitting there debating by some like, hot topic issue.
We're not talking human rights here.
Exactly. We're talking about whether or not It Follows makes sense. We're not
like I will die die on the hill of like free speech, and Ken's like, "Fuck this demon, fuck this sex demon."
Yes, exactly the same thing. It's just like I am pro everything, and yet when it comes to movies, I'm just like, no.
God damn it! This one thing doesn't make sense in this 35-year-old
one
movie.
thing. And I swear to God, and I am so stuck on it that like when I look at a list, and if the list is titled like something along the lines of like the 20 best horror movies we've ever made, and if number one is It Follows, I'm out. The list is done. I'm out. The rest of the list, I turn it off. I can't read the rest of it. I don't understand it. I will never understand it. I have watched this movie 3 times. 3 times to try to pick it apart to see if it actually makes sense. And upon every single rewatch, I just get more and more incensed by it. Where I yell at the TV. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. How could you tell it? And again, my point is, if the director of the movie has to come back in an interview later on after the movie is made, when somebody comes up and says these objections of, we don't understand how it goes, and he's just like, well, perhaps it is more supernatural powers than what we laid out in the movie. That to me is the biggest laying of pipe I've ever heard in my life to excuse something else.
You know what? The only thing I will say in response to that is that, can you imagine making a movie in 2014 and having somebody come up to you 10 years later and be like, listen, this is why your art doesn't make sense, you piece of shit, and having to like explain that? Like, hey, fuck, I'd
George
be like
Lucas
that
has been dealing with that since 1977.
Yeah, and you know what? He's a fucking dick about it too.
As you pointed out so aptly from your comment of whether or not Empire Strikes Back is on its own movies.
I corrected myself. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I will say this though. I will say this. It is, and you're absolutely right. It is fun that it's like, you're right. At a certain point, you have to respect a movie that it has been 10 years since this movie has come out, and I've seen so many different movies, but yet even 10 years later, I am still so incensed by the movie.
Like I said, I get where you're coming from. I understand your objections. You need to chill, dude. It's a good movie.
That's the point, though. It's like I don't want to chill. It's fun to be worked up over something, and if I'm gonna get worked up, I'm gonna get worked over something harmless like It Fucking Follows. Fuck It Follows.
I would like to officially go on record, not Fuck It Follows. It's a great fucking movie.
I would like to officially go on record and say It Follows is highly overrated, and we as America need to come together and reevaluate our priorities as a country if this is the number one horror movie.
I do not believe America's going to come behind you on that, man.
All right, get in the comments, people. This one, I do believe I'm going to get dragged for this one.
As you
I'm going to
should.
get like it's going to be like a 90-10 split where I'm going to have like 10% of the population that knows what a good movie is going to agree with me, and then the other 90% of the population is going to be like with you, which is, you know, excuse everything about the movie just because, oh, it's an allegory for sexual intercourse. Oh.
That's an allegory for sexual assault. God damn it, we're going to have this whole fucking conversation offline.
That's right. You know what we should do is come up with like, you know, like the old school like public access debate shows where we have the pipes dress in like tweed suits and like sit on chairs where like a formal debate moderator happens and like sit there and discuss it.
This movie is going to be your Scanners moment.
Yeah, and like the classical music interludes, you know, before the like public access TV before it starts. Yes, I find It Follows to be highly subjective, and in a time of
That's perfect. Just stroking your beard and smoking your pipe.
As Freud has told us back in the day.
I love it.
Anyway. All right, so in order to fight with us about any of the movies that we talked about and disagree with our list, Rev, where should people go?
You can, well, if you want to send us an email, you can send us an email at the scarebearspodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, or Slasher at ScareBearsPod.
I will say this on the TikTok thing. I know that we haven't had any videos yet. That is going to change.
Allegedly.
So yeah, feel free to start checking that out. That is going to change in the future. But yeah, no, I can't wait to hear what people have to say. I can't wait to get people's feedback. I think the poll is definitely going to include It Follows. So we will see what people have to say in this episode. Yeah, that all sounds good. And man, I really appreciate you taking the time out, discussing horror movies with me, debating them, if you will, and just taking some time out to let us know you're overrated and what you think about some of the movies that people love.
And thank you for coming up with all those dumbass opinions.
You are welcome. I work hard for my dumbass opinions. So anyway, yeah, I didn't know if there was anything else that we wanted to mention. Let's just see here. A couple of different things. Yeah, a couple of different things. Check the show notes for some credits to different things. A couple of podcasts that you guys should check out. There's a podcast called Fear Quincy, FEAR Quincy on Instagram. Definitely worth checking out. Aaron is a good person to go through a movie with and kind of get his take and kind of walk through and see what he thinks about it. Fun times. Anybody that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Creepy Peepers podcast that we talked about before. They're a cool bunch of guys. Deal specifically with horror movies. Focus on a lot of movies, really, especially a lot of pop culture type movies. They know their shit. Give them a listen on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Very, very cool. And just for the people at home to take a shot with the Scare Bears drinking game, Slasher mention.
Slasher mention. Sponsor us, baby.
Other than that, yeah, I think that we just gotta take some time to end the episode. And I think the best way to end the episode is just to sit there and debate about how It Follows is just not that good of a movie that you think it is.
Yeah. You know what, Ken? You made me want to kill myself.